to call to order the Charter Township of Oxford Planning Commission regular meeting scheduled for Thursday, March 8th, 2018. Will you please rise and pay your respects to the flag?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll voted. Mr. Stiz excused. The county. And Mr. Sharp. Sorry. Approval of the agenda, item 4.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular Planning Commission meeting for the Charter Township of Oxford as presented.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Curtis, second by Mr. Knoll. Is any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item 5, approval of the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the regular Planning Commission meeting minutes for February 22nd, 2018.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Knoll. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I'd like to make a comment on that, on item number 4. We did a good job taking care of item number 4 on those minutes. Deanna?
Any other discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes. Item 6, public comments on items not scheduled for public hearing or on this agenda. Any public comments? Seeing none, moving on to number 7. Commissioner comments. Mr. Curtis.
The culvert collapse on Wood Trail on south of Drainer. The road commission dug it up yesterday. They're assessing what they have to do to repair it. It's probably going to be a reinforced concrete pipe going back in, but the culvert did collapse, and they should have the pump stop running today, and they're engineering it on the fly. So they're working on it. The road is closed. They have an agreement between Orion and Oxford for fire and police safety, so things are all covered. I talked about the last time Tough Mudder is coming. Sent everybody a note out that, get prepared, get your TNA accounts lit up, and other than that, happy birthday, Connie, tomorrow. So I wanted to tell you that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Mr. Knoll.
No comment.
Mr. Berg.
I have no comment at this time.
Mr. Onward.
I have no comment.
Mr. Rosner.
No comment.
Okay, I have a comment. I'd like to welcome back Ms. Rosner. Hope you're feeling better. And appreciate you, Mr. Berger, for handling things last week in my absence.
You're welcome.
Okay, item number 8, public hearings. Purpose of this hearing is to receive public comments on the proposed correction to the official zoning map by rezoning of approximately 2.72 acre parcel. Parcel number 04-07-101-018, an approximately 0.91 acre parcel. Parcel number 04-07-101-019, currently zoned SF-2 Suburban Farms, to R1. The subject properties are located on the east side of North Baldwin Road between Shipman and West Oakwood Road. Applicants, the Charter Township of Oxford, 300 Dunlap Road in Oxford, Michigan, 48371. Property owners are Chris and Anne Marie Roop at 2740 North Baldwin Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371, and Little Scholars of Oxford Management Group, LLC, 2750 North Baldwin Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371. Okay, so the petitioner in this case is the Township of Oxford. So Matt, you want to just give us a quick rundown?
Sure, thank you. So the main purpose of this rezoning is to correct an error on the zoning map, which was made sometime, we're not 100% sure when, but between the mid-90s, early 2000s. The western portion of the subject properties, and again noting there are 2 subject properties here, were officially zoned R1. And somewhere along the line, the zoning map was changed incorrectly to show them as SF2. So the main purpose here is to rezone it back to R1, but to avoid split zoning, having that back portion remain as SF2. Instead, the township is proposing a full rezoning to R1 for both subject parcels. The rezoning to R1 is consistent with properties to the north, which are also zoned R1. The rezoning will not create non-conforming structures. And again, it's consistent with the future land use map, future land use designation showing properties to the north as suburban residential. So in conclusion, we do support the full rezoning of both subject parcels to R1, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, we should open the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to open the public hearing at 7:06 PM.
I'll second.
It's been moved by Mr. Curtis, second by Mr. Nold. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, any members in the public wishing to speak on this matter, please step up to the lectern. You've got 3 minutes to discuss anything if you need to discuss it. Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none?
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing at 7:06 PM.
Second.
You could have said 7.
I checked my clock.
Been moved by Mr. Curtis, seconded by Mr. Noel. Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, that passes. Okay, do we have any additional comments? We went through this a couple weeks ago. Any additional comments from the consultants or from the commissioners?
I'd like to make one comment. Some discussion occurred to, change this property to a different zoning than the original R1, and I said to myself, if we changed it to anything but the R1, we would be creating then non-conforming lots, and I'm always against trying to create a non-conforming lot. I don't think the position of the township should try to do it, so I think this recommendation to put it into the R1 and including the property, we're only talking about the easterly portion of lot 18, also included in that. I think it's a good recommendation to put it back and comply with the rest of the lots that are along that corridor.
Okay,
I have no comment.
any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we'll move to item 8.
No. Motion. You
I'm
have a
sorry?
motion. You need to make a motion?
I am. I move that the planning commission recommend to the township board approval of the proposed rezoning from SF2 suburban farms to R1 single-family residential, parcel number 04-07-101-018, 2.72 acres, and parcel 04-07-101-019, 0.91 acres. Applicant, Charter Township of Oxford, on behalf of the property owners, Chris and Anne Marie Root, 2740 North Baldwin Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371, and Little Scholars of Oxford Management Group, LLC, 2750 North Baldwin Road, Oxford, Michigan, 48371. This recommendation of approval is based upon the finding that the proposed rezoning meets the requirements of section 18.3 of the zoning ordinance and is consistent and compatible with master plan, adjacent zoning districts, and adjacent land uses. End of motion.
I'll second that motion.
Been moved by Mr. Curtis, second by Mr. Noel. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just want clarification, and maybe Matt. Matt, is it 18.3 or 18.2? I just
The
want-
18.3 references the approval criteria, the approval procedure.
Yeah. The rezoning request as outlined in 18.2, right?
Yeah, if you want, you can amend it to say 18.2 and 18.3.
I'll amend my motion to include section 18.2.
I'll second that motion.
Any other discussion? Seeing none. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Unwin?
Yes.
Is it Rosner? I didn't hear what you
No.
said. Yeah.
Mr. Unwin.
Oh, I see, right.
Getting him ready. Yeah, he-
No, I have to do it.
Got it.
So do it.
He's still tripping a little bit.
No,
I thought you said my name.
do it. Mr. Berger? Yes. Mr. Curtis?
Yes.
Mr. Conway? Yes. Mr. Knoll?
Yes.
Ms. Rosner Myers?
Yes.
Mr. Spiz is not here. Mr. Young?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on then, item number 9, unfinished business, master plan final. Matt?
Yes, I updated, based on last planning commission meeting, updated several of these chapters. I started with the background studies, and there was a good comment made that since we started the master plan, SEMCOG has updated their data. So I went back and checked all of the areas where we referenced SEMCOG data and updated it to the most recent available numbers. So that's in the background studies chapter. And then in the zoning and implementation plan, I added a section on sub-area plans, which specifically calls out certain areas of the township that we may want to consider sub-area plans, which include detailed information. That's on page 121. I did include the northeast quadrant in parentheses. I called it horse country. I don't know if that's something we want to keep in there. I know it's unofficially called that, but wanted to get your opinion whether we should leave that in or not.
I like it.
All right.
They call us horse people. What's the difference? We're not supposed to live in horse country, right?
All right, well, that's just want to make sure it wasn't somehow offending anybody. I don't know, calling it horse country, but sub-area planning, and then added responsibilities, which added in a couple sections. The first being on page
121 or something?
you know what, I have it listed here, why don't you say it? 121, zoning adjustments. Responsibilities for zoning adjustments fall with the ordinance review committee, planning commission, and then ultimately the township board. Sub-area planning, the planning commission should take the lead on it, but township board will be required to be involved from a budgeting standpoint. And then for the general development ordinances, township board is the decision-making body there, but the planning commission should be involved, especially with planning-related ordinances such as the land division ordinance and future woodland tree protection ordinances. So just added some clarification about who should take the lead in these implementation strategies. And when it clears up, when the snow is all melted, I'm going to go out and take some pictures to put in and get rid of some of the empty white space in the document.
Okay.
I thought those were pictures of the township.
Well, right now they are the snow there.
I have a few things, but does anybody else have anything to say about the latest additions or changes? Or the final version as we have it?
I can tell you that Clerk Wright is going through each and every page. He tackles about 6 to 8 pages a day, and he's working through it to be prepared to discuss this when we meet, what is it, on the 22nd?
Yes.
Do we know the time?
7 o'clock.
7.
6 o'clock.
Thought it was 6 o'clock.
I can, 7.
No, 6 o'clock.
I got 6 in mind.
7.
Okay, well, why'd you ask?
Just trying to verify for public record.
I still think that agricultural numbers for like SED and all that is not taking into consideration a lot of the equine businesses that are not classified. it's always a battle, but, you know, when you're looking at those numbers, I can name you 2 farms that already exceed what the SEV is listed for the entire township.
Yeah, this data was just taken straight from the county equalization reports.
Right, you know, I think it's misleading because that agricultural component is a very important part financially of that northeast quadrant, and actually, you know, many areas in the township, it supports a lot of business and industry, and it's valued much higher than that. It's just that there's a trend to call that a residence. You know, if there's a boarding operation or whatever, the assessor, it's a residence, when actually it's a business, and it's not valued that way. So a lot of the big boarding and training operations and farmsteads out there, it's always a problem in our state, is that those types of operations kind of slip through the cracks and they're called residential. And it doesn't really give the true economic impact of the properties. And there's been studies done that, you know, that show it, but.
Mr. Chair,
Brand new farms.
how do you provide, I mean, we take a lot of our data from other agencies, and like what Matt's saying, you know, with what he took his data from, you know, from the county, how do we, without doing I guess, an individual study on our own with someone, or through an agency or someone, I don't know how we would come up with those
Well, what's their
numbers.
data for farm improved, 401 versus 101? That's not in there.
No, I get it.
So if they actually.
It's not an argument, I just
Yeah, no,
don't,
I'm saying if
I don't know
they
how we get there.
farm improved or, because there's a lot of 401
Because
classifications.
you're right, I drive through there enough to know there are a lot of things going on up there beyond just residential living.
Right, and maybe just a paragraph about it, that it's not reflected in these numbers because a lot of these farms are residences and they're being pegged in that primary use as residential.
This is SEV.
Right.
State equalized value, right?
Right.
State equalized value on agricultural land is a lot lower than it is on residential.
That includes the house and everything.
Yeah.
Including the houses.
Right.
No, it's not lower, absolutely not.
Oh, I'll bet it is.
No, it isn't.
If I'm zoned agricultural with 20 acres and $1 million house on it, I don't pay as much as if it was zoned R1
You're absolutely
with 20
wrong.
acres and a $1 million house.
My price per acre is higher than yours that I'm taxed on.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Oh, yeah.
I disagree.
No, I know,
I
I've done the research on this, and no, we don't get a break on that. We do get a break on sale that it doesn't get uncapped,
I disagree.
but the value is the value.
I
It's
disagree.
assessed.
I personally don't know.
I don't know.
I don't have a comment.
Yeah, I can see if there's any more details or exceptions within the state or the Oakland County Equalization Report.
Those are the agencies we use though.
Right, and if there are exceptions, or there is a note in there that talks about how residential and agriculture are sometimes,
All the other comparative communities around us are under the same ingredients. I mean, if I go to,
SEV value.
if I went to another community, it's gonna be based on the SEV values for comparison. So what I meant was, I don't know how we would do something different without an individual study of sometimes our own to create that value. So I guess we use the agencies we use, that's how we do our studies. I don't know. I don't have a comment, I guess, one way or another. I don't know the value difference. So,
Kelly, if you have information on how farm values are accounted for, you can send it to me, and then maybe if there's some written proof or written documentation of it, I can reference it in the plan. But in terms of the data, the SEV data, I don't want to discredit that by saying something that we don't have documentation for.
Well, it just doesn't seem to me that they separated out farm improved, which is 401 versus 101. I mean, I just looked at the tax records real quick, and it adds up a lot more if you look at farm improved. But it's still listed under residential, but there's a whole classification in farm improved that could be, we have X dollars in SEV and farm improved. properties. We could-
Well, what I could do is instead of putting a little asterisk or something on the SEV thing, I can just include another table based on the farm improved.
Yeah.
That way we're not discrediting the SEV value. But
Yeah, how
we're-
the residentials
yeah,
broke up,
that's
as a
something we can
101
do
and
pretty
401.
easily. But I just need to know where to find that information. So if you have that, please send it to me.
Yeah, I mean, the assessor can pull that in a matter of
Mr.
seconds. but
Mr.
that's-
Chair, the question that may be asked is what is the adjacent counties doing?
what are-
We're talking about Oakland County. What-
Oakland County is really tough on agriculture. We don't have the same problem in Lapeer and the surrounding counties. And our new assessor and stuff is much more up to date. It was a battle, absolute battle with the previous one about what qualified ag was. And they absolutely refused, and they lost all the court cases on it. And so the new assessor came in and fixed it. And the law actually had to be changed to clarify for Oakland County. They knew they weren't getting it. And, you know, by putting it in that one farm improved, the acre is actually assessed higher, but you're also not, you know, on cap when you sell, and that's to help the preservation, to keep it a farm as opposed to breaking it up, so. You get penalized one way, but then rewarded on the next side.
Anything else? Anyone? Observations? For me, when I step back and I read, there's a lot of data in this, okay? Data. There's a lot of people that say, you gotta follow the master plan, you know? Township board wants to know what are we gonna shape the township like, okay? We're gonna become Warren. I don't think that's our target. This plan makes it pretty clear what values the communities put on us, right? I'm hoping. I reread this goals and objectives and strategy section. It does talk about the northeast quadrant, it talks about the northwest quadrant, about keeping it that way. I also know through public opinion, both live here and also through the survey, that it's important that we remain rural. I'm hoping that this plan kind of states that. So when people say we're not following the master plan, we can kind of judge that for ourselves, because this is what we're suggesting we do. The other thing that I know we were tasked to do is try to provide buffer zones from the M24 industrial development zone area, and to provide a buffer between that and the next, whatever you want to call it, zoning. Not sure how that's done when we've got some 5-acre and 10-acre parcels coming right up to 24, but I understand what the request was from the township supervisor, and I want to make sure that we, as a commission, have kind of addressed buffer zones, keeping a portion of this township up in the north section rural. When you read the plan, does that come through to you? Is that what this is supposed to do?
It does in some ways, but I think things that are going to probably make Oxford stay a little more rural in some conditions are based on whether there's sewer capacity for greater densities. And I think with the county standards of 1 acre minimum lots, even for septic systems and such under the new guidelines, we have some large tracts of land that could be done as a PUD, but I don't think they can really put densities down too far. I mean, get densities too great based on what they're going to be allowed to work with. If the township doesn't expand or have capacity to do it either. And second, I guess, you know, when I look at buffering, I mean, we have to look with what we already have in our ordinance. And if things come up to us as the planning commission members, we always have the right to request additional buffering criteria based on what's just the minimal amount in the plan of what is required by zoning. So this group of people, planning commission members, are the ones that will probably help regulate that. So if we keep that in our mindset, I think we should be able to work well with what we have. I think there's areas that still could be looked at, I mean, in greater detail.
whether you have the time and the resources to do it, it becomes awkward, you know? If we could spend additional time in some of the areas in the township to make sure that we guarantee those to be better protected, I think we've done as good as we could with what we had to work with to this point in time. So I would be ready to make recommendations to move forward. Or I mean, that's where I'm at right now, so.
What population, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
what population density do we consider rural?
I don't answer, I'm not answering
I
that.
mean, we say rural, and we went up 37% in a 10-year period, another 30. We doubled up, we more than doubled our population in that 20-year period. And is Orion rural? What's rural? I mean, we don't even know. Why can't we put a figure to that so we know when we're acting outside?
Is there a legal
Our-
definition for it?
No, there isn't.
No.
It says rural is everything outside of town. Well, we're
What
kind of
town?
a town. I mean, you look in the center of our town and it's a big mass of rooftops and high density. So what's rural? So if we're making plans into the future and we're looking at PUDs and we're looking at these overall densities, we can go, you know, we're exceeding that rural target of X. Why shouldn't we have some really firm conversations about that so that our community knows what rural is? What does it mean?
I think.
I don't think 1 acre lots are rural.
No, I didn't mean that, but I think one thing that when I look at, and I only worked in another community, and everybody knows it's out here. When I look at the minimum lot size components, sometimes with 20 acres, 10 acres, and 5 acres, we have several tracts of land that are still within those requirements, where a lot of communities just don't. I mean, south of here in Orion, their largest tracts of lands are 2.5 acre minimum parcel sizes. And with that, you know, being said all the way down to greater densities, I think we have some rural areas within the community, and we have some that definitely are not.
Right.
But some of it happened before I came here. Waterstone was one of the things that obviously pushed a lot of population into this community. That was regulated by previous people in positions. And, but I still think we have some nice areas to protect. And like I said, for that northeast quadrant, just leave it alone. I mean, that's a nice area to just keep it the way it is. And I think some of the stuff we've done within the format of what we have in front of us has tried to do that. I don't know if there's a definition for rural anymore.
Well, as I'm saying, why don't we have a concrete definition of what are we in this community?
Because you got rural residential, you got, you know, I mean, what do you want to call it? It's,
And it comes to like a pinch point. You can say we can get so much density and you're relying on these big, large tracts of land to reduce your overall density, but you pinch those people out. We can't get out with traffic, we can't do all that, and you lose the value of those properties, and people just want to subdivide like the rest of the town and get out. And then, you know, now we're the next Orion, and then it goes north and it spreads. So how do we preserve that rural character that we have now?
I think part of it's us right here.
But without a definition, this group here today changes. I've been on this 20 years, and I've seen it. You know, we had the same standard in this same master plan over the last 20 years when our population doubled.
Matt,
We don't have numbers on rural.
what are there are designations, rural, city, what else are there? Is there, I mean, village?
Well, yeah, there's no definitive answer to that question.
Right.
Each community.
You have, I think, through the new urban service district that we're proposing in the master plan, that we can separate out where more suburban uses are appropriate and ensure that the more rural areas that are currently in the northeastern quadrant, northwestern quadrant are maintained and preserved. But I would be hesitant to say that as an overall, we have rural portions in this township and we have suburban portions in this township. And I think a good strategy is to say, well, we have suburban, let's make sure that future development is restricted to certain areas and is of high quality, and that isn't too dense, but is consistent with what we have, but that we're preserving the rural areas that we do have in the northeast and northwest, that we're not allowing that more dense development to spread out there.
Do you guys agree we're doing that through our future land use map? Doesn't that kind of dictate some of your density?
You guys, me or the commission?
Anybody?
Well, for example,
Just double check it, because I got a feeling we got that, might get some of this.
look at all these overlays, and then when you look at these overlays and what's planned and what happens, where's a real strong guidance to go to an applicant? This says in our master plan that our rural density is this, and you're really exceeding that, that's not going to happen. But you have the gravel pit right here. You're looking, what's going to happen there? How about the ones, north of Oakwood on the west side? With all these big tracts of land,
Yeah.
what's going to happen right here? It's surrounded by subs. What's stopping it?
happened here.
What's surrounded, but you got that huge bit right there. You're looking right at it.
Yeah, that's right.
So, what's the plan? More subdivisions?
Well, you have to, and it does, Tom, I think you said it right, it does come down to the planning commission. You have a master plan,
This group?
and you have every reason to deny an application that isn't consistent with the master plan, as long as it's, the zoning is one aspect of it, but people are gonna come in and ask for a rezoning. Starts there with a PUD. You look at that proposal and you look at the master plan. You say, is it too dense? What does our master plan say if it is? You have every reason to say your PUD is too dense. We're not going to look at it. Because you have adopted this master plan, you've talked about it, and you've set a vision for the future.
I'm going to go back on Callie for a minute because in previous years that I've been up here, and Callie has been too, one of her comments has always been, when someone comes in with a PUD, where's the benefit? And that's what, I'm serious.
Yeah.
That's where this group is the one that has to say, wait a minute here, just because that's what you want doesn't mean that's what you're going to get. I think we have to be stronger and stand up on our 2 feet and help promote the idea of what we want in the future. So it's this group, it's this commission that will do a lot of that for this township. Otherwise, there isn't anything that typically spells it out by definition. So I feel there are certain areas, I don't want them any denser. I think sometimes when someone comes in and shows a good plan, if you can group density and create more open space, I'm inclined to go along with some of that, from what's down the road. But for right now, it's going to be this commission maintaining the integrity of what we try to do within this community for the next several years. Until something gets reinvented in the spoke of the wheel, I don't know.
Does our master plan, does it have leverage when it comes, like if I'm a property owner, or let's say I own the pit across the street, I want to develop it into multi-family home sites or whatever, and it doesn't work with us as far as how our master plan sits, or for another piece of property, whatever. I take the township to court. Does the master plan have leverage with the court of law?
Absolutely.
It does?
The Michigan Planning Act, the Michigan Zoning Act, relatively recent, say your community is charged with forming a plan.
Well, does
That's
the courts uphold that?
That's the basis of that, and any challenge has to be on the plan, and this is where I'm coming back to it. The specificity of that plan is what will be upheld. The more you detail what that vision is, the more you lay it out, the more you define what's urban, the more you put that in there, the less chance a developer has of going in there and picking it apart. I can tell you right now, developer would pick that apart. We have these visions, and the same visions resulted in us doubling the population, and that's what the developer's gonna come and say. This is rural. They define rural, this is a rural community. Waterstone is rural, Willow Lake is rural, all these areas, we get the condos.
So
and
we
all
have to
that.
find our own term for rural?
if we define it and we make that decision, that's what the courts look like. The specificity of the plan and how we stick to it. So being, really specific with the plan only helps you uphold the plan. Being general gives everybody an opportunity to pick it apart.
Well, I would agree with that statement. I just wasn't, I didn't know what the, how much leverage
Challenge us
the
to
master
the plan.
plan has
Yeah.
in
And
the
if
court
you
of
don't
law.
uphold that master plan, the courts say you might as well throw it out the window. Because you just didn't follow your own rules, so we're not gonna
Yeah,
make
well,
the
that makes
developer.
sense.
All right, any changes then, additional changes or comments to the master plan as it sits?
Well, and I feel strongly that we're still not giving it enough teeth. It's a great plan without teeth.
But the plan can be revisited, correct?
It's
At any time?
Anytime.
anytime and it's required to be revisited. What this was, from the get-go, was an update.
Okay.
And there's is a difference between an update and a complete rewrite, but an update is you have a more limited budget, really, from the get-go. So there are restrictions on how much more information we can put into it.
Okay. Anything else? Anyone? Okay. So, we're comfortable with making this the final version?
Well, I can describe what happens. The next step, we have the joint meeting.
Yeah.
At that meeting, I can put together a motion. What has to happen, the planning commission has to make a recommendation to the township board to distribute the plan out to surrounding communities. So,
After the joint meeting?
well, there's a couple ways we could do it. After the joint meeting, I think we want to hear what the township board has to say about it.
I would wait until we do that.
I think if the township board is
Yeah,
looking at it and they see that there are major updates that have to happen, you're not going to want to recommend it for distribution until you make
correct.
those changes.
I'd wait until you have the joint.
But if you have the meeting and 90% of the plan is good to go, at the joint meeting, you as a planning commission can make that recommendation to the township board.
Okay.
And then the next township board meeting, give them time to look at it again. They can make a motion to distribute it. Then after it's distributed, you have 63 days, or surrounding communities have 63 days to provide their comment back to the township. We consider it. We don't have to make the changes, but we consider it. And then meet again as a planning commission to do a final adoption.
Okay.
Our next meeting's a joint, right?
All right. I say if you got any additional information from Gally, you can incorporate that in, and then we're good to go for next week. Or
Whatever the next
2 weeks
meeting.
from now.
Yeah, the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Item 10, new business, there is none. Communications, item 11, communications or committee reports. Economic Development Committee.
Oh, we did not have a meeting.
Ordinance Review Committee.
We had a meeting this evening, and because we had done a lot of work already on starting a solar energy systems ordinance, this evening we went through our first draft of that ordinance that we put together. We have deleted some sections or some wording. We have incorporated some changes that we're going to have probably ready to look at for our next meeting. Then we would want to bring it to the planning commission for their perusal, to look at it, and then if they have comments or changes they would like to discuss. We think we've kept it in a form that is somewhat simple to read. A couple areas might not appear that way in the beginning, but when you look at them closer, they're very distinct and to the point. So we'll go from there. And then also, we just started looking to amendments that were proposed to to Article 18.2 from the previous ordinance review committee. And Callie was on there at the time, and it has to do with our zoning districts. And so we will be spending additional time on that in the near future, because I wasn't aware of what had taken place from some of the previous meetings before I got involved again. So that will be on our next agenda, to work more diligently that way and look at that. And then there's some other things on the list of criteria that the township board kind of had put in order for what they thought were their priorities, and we'll go from that. But we should have something on the solar system ordinance soon to this commission, and then if things go right, we'll eventually make a recommendation to the township board, and then we'll go from there. And we're not sure on the next meeting date. We're just going to discuss it again. We might have another meeting yet this month because of the lack of the presence of some of the people in the month of April.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Item 12, planner and engineering reports. Matt, you got anything else?
No additional comment, thanks.
Okay. With that, we'll move to item 13. This meeting is,
Interject
I'm
something.
sorry.
I've been trying to find it here. There is a meeting that's going to be held by the Road Commission of Oakland County, and it's just that future planning, taking the road studies out to 2045. And I can't find it now, and I was trying to find a date and time, but everybody is invited to it.
Yeah, those meetings are something else.
I know, as soon as I get to it, I'll have the information passed.
Was it sometime this month or?
Yes,
Yeah,
it's like the 24th or,
hosted by Oakland County?
it's the Road Commission of Oakland County,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been trying to search for it, and I can't find the darn thing. But that's all I had. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Meeting's out at 8:44, or 7:44.